Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take just a monumental stack of research, of field notes, expert analysis, and we boil it all down until you are the most well-informed person in the room.
And today we are wading into some very deep water. I mean, this is a story that's equal parts cutting-edge cetacean biology, some really intense deep-sea geopolitics, and, well,
And an astonishing, almost Lovecraftian discovery.
that's a good way to put it. We are doing a comprehensive deep dive into a whole cache of materials, all centered around the research of one Dr. Nathan Quinn. He's a highly specialized humpback whale researcher off Maui, Hawaii.
Right, but you have to understand, this isn't just a dry scientific story.
No, not at all. It's a high-stakes narrative. It starts with, the complex patterns of whale song, but it spirals so fast into military conflicts, sabotage.
And then the ultimate discovery of this ancient sentient organism that just fundamentally challenges every single biological premise we hold to be true.
Every single one.
Okay, so let's unpack this monumental shift. Our mission today is to trace Nate Quinn's journey from really a frustrated, burned-out academic.
Yeah, he was grappling with feelings of irrelevance.
Exactly. From that to being the man who discovers the literal, self-aware primordial soup and then has to figure out what on earth to do about it.
And to really get the scale of it, we have to understand the high stakes of his initial research first. That's the key.
So let's start there, the setting.
We begin in the Sapphire Channel off Maui, and the setting is absolutely critical here. We're in Lahaina.
Which, ironically, was one of the biggest whaling towns in the Pacific.
Exactly. One of the greatest. And today, it's a conservation hub, but you can feel that history of exploitation sort of hanging over all the research.
And at the center of it all is Dr. Nathan Quinn. Nate? The sources describe him as maybe the most trained listener in the world.
He's dedicated his entire professional life to specializing in humpback whale song. But when we meet him in these notes, he's fighting two major battles.
An external one against commercial and military interests.
And an internal one, a battle against this creeping professional malaise.
Let's talk about that internal battle because it's important context.
It really is. Nate is grappling with what the sources call a classic midlife crisis, but it's all wrapped up in this existential scientific dread.
He spent 25 years listening.
And at one point, he describes his own job as something an intern, or even, his words, a monkey, could do after enough training. He felt interchangeable.
And that feeling of irrelevance, that's what's pushing him to, break the boundaries of acoustic analysis so aggressively.
Right, because the core mystery was still completely unsolved. Humpbacks migrate thousands of miles to Hawaii, but they don't eat there.
They just come to calve, and crucially for our story, to sing.
And for a quarter of a century, Nate, with all his expertise, had no definitive, testable idea why they sang. It just seemed like pure, beautiful, but functionally useless noise.
His operational base even kind of mirrors this conflict.
It does. He and his research partner, Demodocus, work out of a compound they call Papilani.
Hawaiian for heaven.
Yeah. And this place, it was a gift from a wealthy patron they affectionately call the Old Broad. Her name is Elizabeth Robinson, and that's where they do all their deep-sea acoustic analysis from their research boat.
The Constantly Baffled. Great name.
A very fitting name. But even before things got really uncanny, Nate's work had already made him some powerful enemies.
Tangible enemies. We're talking about a guy named John Thomas Fuller. He's the CEO of Hawaii Whale Incorporated.
And Fuller operates under this guise of supporting marine science. But his operation is commerce first, science a distant second. He had a lot of money in the recreational jet ski and parasailing business.
In those exact waters where the whales were.
Exactly. And Nate's meticulous behavioral research established, without a doubt, that the high-frequency noise from those boats was severely disrupting the whales, especially the calving mothers.
And this wasn't just some paper he published. The research was directly responsible for getting jet skiing and parasailing banned in the Lahaina area during the critical whale season from December to April.
Which cost Fuller millions. So now you have a powerful, wealthy, and very motivated adversary, the kind of person who might, hire someone to shut down your research operation for good.
Okay, so that brings us to the song itself. This is where Nate's work really sets him apart from everyone else. And it leads him right into the path of danger.
Let's talk about the knowns first because they're fascinating on their own.
Every male humpback in a given population, they all sing the exact same song each season.
The exact same song. It's a shared cultural artifact, a musical theme that might change a little over time, but it's uniform across thousands of miles.
It's incredible. And Nate had his own system for this, right? He used terms like green themes.
Yeah, that was his taxonomy. A green theme was like a long, resonant series of whoops. To the average person, it just sounds like these magnificent, mournful calls.
But he wasn't listening for the music.
No, that's the crucial difference. He was listening for data structure.
And this is where things get a bit technical, but you have to grasp this to understand the breakthrough. His old doctoral advisor, a legend named Gerard Growl Ryder.
Who everyone thought was dead, by the way.
Right. Well, Ryder had analyzed the music, the notes, the themes decades ago. And he famously concluded that the humpback song carried an incredibly tiny, he called it an anemic amount of information.
Just 0.6 bits per second.
To put that in perspective for you, that's about as much information as like a super slow Morse code.
Yeah.
Or a grunt.
So if that were true, the song was biologically interesting, but informationally it was irrelevant. It wasn't a language. And that conclusion kind of depressed the entire field for decades.
Nate's hypothesis completely overturned this. This was his scientific masterpiece.
And the difference wasn't the sound. It was how he listened. Instead of the musical notes, he focused on the tiniest details of the sound wave itself, the specific waveform peaks and troughs.
He used custom-built filtered spectrographs.
Right. A standard one just shows frequency and volume. Nate's equipment filtered out all the ambient noise, focused on these subtle modulations, and let him see those peaks and troughs as sharp, quantifiable, repeating structures.
And he had this realization.
It's a huge one. He realized if he froze the waveform, he could translate those variations, the ups and the downs, into binary code.
Ones and zeros.
Ones and zeros. This is the breakthrough. By treating the song as a digital signal, not an analog one, Nate estimated the song could carry between 50 and 60 bits per second.
Okay, wait. The jump from 0.6 to 60 bits per second? That's astronomical.
It's a complete paradigm shift. It transforms the humpback song from, rudimentary noise into a high-level data stream.
It implies structure, intent, syntax.
It implies a density of information capable of conveying complex ideas, potentially a full language.
So if he's right, he just invalidated 25 years of his own career.
Yeah.
All based on his advisor's premise. I mean, how did he even cope with that? The idea that all his previous work was just noise.
That was the source of his scientific desperation. He had to prove this new theory, even though it contradicted the foundation of his entire career. And the only way to do that was through this meticulous, unique analysis, generating years of data stored on these very specific hard disks and magnetic tapes.
He was basically working in a vacuum.
Totally. Convinced he was listening to the most significant communication system on Earth, but unable to prove it to anyone until he had the key to translate it.
And that brings us to the escalation. Once Nate had proven the potential of this 60-bit song, the opposition moves from, commercial disagreements to
physical espionage, targeted data destruction.
It was a literal attack on the data.
Yeah. Nate drives into the Papalani compound one day and just finds chaos. The bungalow, their heavenly research office, had been professionally tossed, drawers ripped out, files everywhere, computers overturned.
And Clay's expensive 42-inch flat panel monitor was destroyed by a single, deliberate, long crack down the diagonal.
And the destruction was so targeted, it suggests they knew exactly what they were looking for.
They didn't steal Clay's camera gear.
And that stuff was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. His specialized Nikon underwater cameras, the housings, all untouched. Instead, the specific losses were all the acoustic records.
The cassette tapes?
Most of them, going back 2 years of field recordings, were physically destroyed, unspooled, wadded into this hideous bird's nest of brown plastic, and critically, all the magnetic media, the hard disks with Nate's waveform analysis,
That's great.
scrambled, probably with a strong localized magnetic pulse. The motive was purely to eradicate that unique data set. It confirms someone knew exactly what Nate was building.
And the first person they suspect, obviously, is John Thomas Fuller, the CEO who lost the jet ski fight.
Of course, especially since Fuller seemed to know about the break-in almost immediately. But the timing also coincided with something else, something Nate just dismissed as a stress-induced fantasy.
The Fluke.
The Fluke. Just before the break-in, he's out on the water and sees these unusual stark white markings on a whale's tail fluke.
And they appear to spell out a message.
A very clear message. Bite me.
Which is, that's just a bizarre and darkly funny detail for a scientist already under this much pressure.
Yeah.
He thought he was hallucinating.
Right. Nate, the hyper-skeptical scientist, his first instinct is to rationalize the impossible. But that bite me message, It would later turn out to be real.
Clay had captured it on film.
He had.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying proof. Not only was someone spying on him, but they were communicating directly, intentionally, and cheekily through the whales themselves.
Okay, so now you have to compound this internal threat commercial espionage mixed with this uncanny communication with a very real external military presence.
Yes. The researchers were very aware of a Captain Tarwater, a uniformed naval officer, and a Navy-funded research group led by a guy named Cliff Hyland operating nearby.
Hyland's group was supposedly working on acoustic stuff.
Yeah, acoustic stuff.
Yeah.
But everyone suspected they were deploying advanced directional array hydrophones, and not for peaceful reasons.
And the bigger threat was the Navy was thinking about moving a torpedo firing range right into the protected sanctuary waters off Maui.
And this is where Clay, Nate's partner, brings in this historical paranoia that just raises the stakes even higher.
He warns Hyland about past Navy projects, specifically something called the Pacific Biological Ocean Science Program.
Which is a really dark piece of history. In the 60s, field biologists were unknowingly contributing data on seabirds that the Navy then used to develop biological weapon delivery systems.
They were adapting birds to carry payloads.
Yes. So the fear for Nate and Clay wasn't just that LFA sonar would deafen the whales.
Let's clarify LFA sonar for you. It's low-frequency active sonar. It's incredibly loud, low-frequency sound that can travel for thousands of miles. The Navy uses it to find silent submarines.
But for cetaceans, especially baleen whales that communicate in those same low frequencies, LFA sonar is like a flashbang grenade going off next to your head constantly. It blinds and deafens them. It disrupts everything.
So the fear wasn't just about noise pollution.
No. The fear was that Nate's data, his discovery of this complex, super efficient communication system, could be weaponized.
The pressure from Fuller, the bizarre sabotage, the looming Navy threat, it all just converged. And it set the stage for this story to take a hard left turn when the reality of this other world comes literally crashing into Nate's life.
The shift from, dealing with commercial espionage to being literally taken hostage by a piece of organic technology it's jarring.
How does it happen?
Nate is diving. He's trying to get a better shot of a singing whale's flukes, and he's suddenly captured.
The sources describe it as just profound, disorienting terror. He doesn't board a submarine.
Yeah.
He's taken into a whale.
A massive humpback that's being used as a specialized living ship. And the initial experience is just immediately nauseating. The inhabitants themselves call it hurl patrol.
It sounds horrifyingly visceral. What's the inside of a whale ship actually like?
It's entirely organic. It's warm. It's moist. It's rubbery. You can feel these massive, powerful muscles moving right beneath the skin, propelling the ship. The air is thick and humid. It's not a machine. It's a symbiotic system.
And the crew is even stranger than the vessel. You have human personnel, Pointer and Poe, who seem, used to this. But then you have the Whaley boys.
The Whaley boys, Skippy and Scooter, are the two that are named. And they're the pilots.
And they're not human.
Not at all. They're these fascinatingly detailed humanoid whale and dolphin creatures. Thick necks, smooth skin, blowholes that retract and close. And they are the essential operating system because they are, and this is a quote, tapped directly into the whale's nervous system.
So they're not steering with a wheel or a joystick. It's a direct biological connection.
Precisely. They control everything. Propulsion, depth, maneuverability by directly interfacing with the cetacean's nervous system. The notes say they frequently and exuberantly do these acrobatic maneuvers like breaching.
Which they love.
Which they love, and which violently tosses Nate around inside this warm, rubbery interior. It just hammers home that this is a living creature first and a ship second.
And Nate, the scientist, he's just trying to process this impossible technology. What's the thing that strikes him as the most advanced piece of engineering in all of this?
Ironically, it's the sanitation system, the ingress and egress mechanism.
What the sources call the poop-chute technology.
Exactly. And you have to understand this to see how their society can operate under such extreme pressure. It uses a sealed back orifice, the whale's anus, for waste disposal and for transferring people.
So what's the significance of that?
It allows Pointer, the human crewman, to exit the humpback in a pressure suit and retrieve things, operating at 3 atmospheres of pressure. The orifice seals perfectly around him without crushing his chest, and it maintains the surface level pressure inside the ship.
It's an incredible piece of bioengineering.
It's exquisite. And Pointer even mentions that the main entry, the mouth, usually doesn't even open. This particular ship was specially modified to retrieve dirts, their name for surface humans.
They see us as a strange, volatile species.
That's putting it mildly.
Nate is then transferred to a blue whale ship, which must have been just enormous in comparison.
Oh, yeah. The humpback was like a minivan. The blue whale is described as a motorhome. It's vastly larger, built for sustained long-distance travel. And this ship is piloted by a human woman, Ciel Nuez.
And she provides the first really critical piece of historical context.
She does. She tells Nate that she and her husband were shipwrecked off Costa Rica in 1927. She was salvaged by the Whaley boys and brought down to their home.
So this establishes the long-term systematic nature of this operation.
Right. The inhabitants aren't a recent thing. They're humans taken or salvaged from the surface world over long periods of time, often from disasters like shipwrecks or plane crashes. She mentions they've retrieved people from sunken submarines and sometimes even yanked sonar guys out of port.
This has to be Nate's moment of true scientific crisis. Everything he's dedicated his life to, evolutionary biology, is being contradicted right in front of his eyes.
It completely is. He's seeing intentionally designed, perfected organic technology and creatures that defy the millions of years that should be required for natural selection.
It's forcing him to confront the idea that the universe he studied, where random mutation and selective pressure drive life.
Yeah.
That's not the universe he's in right now.
And the speed of it all, the intentionality, the fact that the Whaley boys were created in just the last couple hundred years, that's the scientific breaking point for Nate.
So his journey ends at Gouville, the central hub of this massive underwater society. It sounds almost like a mythological kingdom.
Gouville is astounding. It's a massive underwater grotto, 600 feet down, but it's maintained at surface pressure through this extensive system of tunnels and pressure locks.
The environment sounds surreal.
It is. The ceiling provides this cold-colored light, and the ground isn't rock or sand. It's a hard shell over a gelatinous, pulsing material that they just call the goo.
And this is where Nate meets Cal Burdick, who delivers the ultimate revelation. What exactly is the goo?
Cal explains that the goo is a single, self-aware organism. It's Earth's original life form, the literal 3.5 billion-year-old primordial soup that we all thought had just faded into history.
Single organism.
A single, massive, living entity that covers the deepest parts of the ocean floor.
3.5 billion years old. That's just staggering. What can it do? What power does it have?
It's the ultimate biological repository. The goo contains every single bit of biological knowledge on the planet. It can shape itself rapidly into almost any organism. It has the blueprints for everything that has ever lived.
And that capability, that's what directly challenges Darwinian evolution.
It's the knockout punch to Nate's entire career. Cal confirms that the goo made the whale ships. It made the Whaley boys, these complex, specialized hybrids, only 200 or 300 years ago.
So it bypassed millions of years of evolution.
Completely bypassed it using targeted bioengineering. It found its niche first. The core function of life is replication, and the goo is the ultimate replicator of genes. It just adapted enough to survive while letting other, more complex life forms come and go, essentially just collecting their genetic blueprints along the way.
That's a horrifying thought. It suggests that all complex surface life, us included, we're all just temporary side projects, experiments in adaptation, and that the true life on Earth is the ocean floor.
And that's exactly what Nate is struggling with. This ancient organism, which is basically the physical manifestation of all life, has been watching surface life from below.
Then Nate is brought before the Colonel, and the Colonel turns out to be his thought-to-be-dead advisor, Growl Ryder.
And Ryder isn't just another salvaged human. He's an ideological convert to the goo's mission.
He explains that he's the one who brought electrical and computer technology down to Gouville. He accelerated the goo's understanding of humanity and evolution beyond just biology.
Right. His technology is what allowed them to scramble Nate's data and, crucially, to translate the whale songs into English text.
And this leads to the core philosophical conflict of the whole story. The reason the goo is now actively engaging with the surface world.
The cosmic war between genes and memes.
This is the thematic climax, so we need to explain it carefully.
Genes are biological inheritance. That's the goo's domain. They're passed down by birth. Memes, on the other hand, are cultural information. Anything learned, imitated, replicated culturally.
Language, religion, technology, art, philosophy, that's humanity's domain.
And Ryder argues that when life left the water, the goo got a blind spot. It understood biological replication perfectly, but it completely failed to comprehend the power and the danger of cultural replication.
And this is where the humpback song comes roaring back to the center of the story.
The humpback song was the first meme that the goo truly encountered. a highly complex learned behavior. It's not innate. It's copied and evolved by the population that wasn't passed down by genetic instruction. Ryder thinks the goo noticed this powerful, complex cultural signal about 15 million years ago.
So how did the goo react to this powerful, non-genetic signal?
It liked it. Ryder reveals the shocking truth. The humpback song is actually prayer. It's a complex cultural pattern that the goo found aesthetically pleasing, and the goo, in its role as the ultimate master of all biological systems, answered that prayer.
By providing food. Krill.
It provides krill to the singers.
And that explains Nate's fundamental mystery, why humpbacks don't starve in the feeding grounds. They're being actively fed by the Earth's oldest organism as a reward for their prayer.
It's the ultimate symbiotic relationship. The song is a cultural expression, a meme that's reinforced by a biological reward genes, food controlled by the goo. But Ryder warns Nate that humanity's memes, our destructive cultural output, our technology, our inability to live in harmony, are now seen as an existential threat.
A threat that must be purged.
Yes. Ryder, having fully embraced this philosophy, has become completely deluded. He sees humanity as a volatile virus that needs to be eliminated to protect the goo.
And he demands Nate escape and convince the Navy to launch a nuclear strike on Gooville.
Arguing that Gooville is some kind of staging ground for an attack on humanity.
Nate refuses. He sees the madness in Ryder's ideology. He realizes his former mentor is the one who's been corrupted by technology and fear, not the goo itself. And now the ethical stakes for him have moved from, conservation to preventing a nuclear catastrophe on the ocean floor.
Meanwhile, back on the surface, Clay, Kona, and the others are working around the clock to reconstruct Nate's data from those scrambled hard drives.
And they use Kona's detailed field notes on how to isolate and freeze the waveform peaks and troughs, Nate's binary method.
And the reconstruction yields immediate, shocking results. The 60-bit song isn't just carrying complex data, it's carrying plain English text. It confirms the direct communication Nate saw in the Bite Me Fluke message.
They print out 3 pages of streaming text, including a really specific, alarming phrase.
"We'll scuttle second boat 2, followed by a set of coordinates."
This is proof. Intentional linguistic communication, encoded by a non-human intelligence or, well, more accurately,
encoded by the Gooville inhabitants through the whale song. It confirms the song is now being actively used for operational communication.
And this revelation lines up perfectly with a massive truth bomb from Amy, Nate's new love interest.
She confesses her entire life story. Her resume was all manufactured. Her real age is 64, not the 30-something she claimed.
And she's an inhabitant of Gooville. She was salvaged decades ago.
And the connection here is huge. It bridges this massive historical gap. Amy is the daughter of Amelia Earhart.
Wow.
Yes. Earhart, who disappeared in 1937, she was also taken by the goo. Amy was sent to spy on Nate to make sure he didn't uncover or reveal Gooville's existence.
But when she sees Ryder's plan for nuclear annihilation, she helps Nate escape. Her loyalty shifts.
It shifts from protecting the secret to preventing mass destruction. But she also reveals a really dark consequence of living in Gooville, this self-aware primordial soup. It's not just an environment, it's physically addictive.
She explains that Gooville's inhabitants can't leave for very long, or they get profoundly sick and die.
The goo literally becomes part of you. It gets into your tissues, your biochemistry through osmosis and contact. It's a biological addiction with a hard time limit, which means Nate, having been inside the whale ships and Gooville,
He's now on a deadline.
He's on a clock for his return to the surface world.
Nate does get a definitive moment of justice against Ryder, though. He's put on trial for treason against the goo.
And the scene is just dramatic and deeply unsettling. Ryder is brought into this amphitheater, and he's ranting like a mad prophet, demanding the goo eliminate humanity.
His sentence is immediate execution.
Carried out by specialized killer whale whaley boys. And the sources are brutally specific here. The alpha female killer whale whaley boy bends over and bites off Ryder's head in front of the whole crowd.
A definitive, visceral end to the corrupted mentor.
And Nate uses Amy's help to make his escape. He gets back to Maui for the final critical confrontation with the naval establishment.
Right, because he knows he can't just walk in and say, hey, I was in a living whale ship run by humanoids, and my dead mentor wants to nuke the primordial soup.
It's not going to work. His challenge is providing irrefutable, scientifically observable proof of the goo's power.
So he meets with Captain Tarwater, and he places a jar of ordinary seawater on his desk.
And this is the ultimate scientific demonstration, the ultimate proof.
What happened?
The goo, in its most common form, is the SAR-11 bacteria. It's the single most abundant organism on Earth. It's something like 25% of all microbial life in the open ocean.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And Nate demonstrates how the goo, through the SAR-11, can orchestrate the creation of a complex organism krill from the ambient microbial life in that jar right there on Tarwater's desk.
That is the ultimate proof. A visible, real-time miracle of creation. It demonstrates a mechanism that fundamentally controls the food chain and, crucially, answers the prayer of the humpbacks.
And Nate uses this devastating proof to leverage political capital. He demands Tarwater immediately halt the planned torpedo range and the LFA sonar testing.
The threat he uses isn't just military or conservationist, though. It's politically catastrophic.
Exactly. Nate warns Tarwater that exposing the military's plan to harm an animal that prays to God would be a career-ending disaster for every politician involved, especially under what the sources call the current religiously sensitive administration.
And Tarwater, ambitious and just stunned by the appearance of Krill on his mahogany desk, agrees to use his influence to stop the project.
So the story concludes with a resolution that ties together all the surface characters. Clay, Hona, and the Old Broad, they secure a massive 180-foot fisheries patrol vessel bought with Elizabeth Robinson's money.
They paint an H on the deck and sail to the coordinates they got from the intercepted whale song off the coast of Chile.
And that location becomes a place of profound reunion. They arrive and are met by this incredible gathering. Dozens of whale species, sperm whales, right whales, humpbacks, all just lolling on the surface watching the ship.
And it's the ultimate convergence. Elizabeth Robinson, the Old Broad, is reunited with her long-lost husband, Chief Petty Officer James Robinson,
Who was taken decades ago but is alive and well in Gouville. And the sources provide this wonderful, poignant detail. She brings him a hot pastrami on rye sandwich, a taste of the surface world he hasn't had in 40 years.
that one small, deeply human detail. The pastrami sandwich. It just cuts through all the incredible sci-fi and reminds you of the profound emotional cost of Gouville's salvage operation.
Absolutely. The narrative ends with Nate and Amy deciding to pursue a relationship. Nate continues his research on the surface, but now with full knowledge of Gouville and aware that he is on that clock. He has to return to the surface periodically to avoid the fatal addiction to the goo.
But he's fundamentally bonded to this newly discovered sentient layer of our planet.
So this whole deep dive, it began with a question about conservation and the mystery of the humpback song.
And Nate discovered that the song is, in essence, a successful cultural artifact, a meme that's answered by the Earth's oldest living organism. But the sources remind us, the conventional, factual threats to cetaceans on the surface world, they remain dire and absolutely real.
We can't ignore the economic reality of conservation. It's articulated beautifully by a researcher named James Darling, who said, "The reason we shouldn't kill whales is because they fire the imagination."
And for many species, conservation relies on that simple fact. It's vastly more profitable to watch whales than to consume them, but that logic is constantly being undermined.
You see it in these quasi-legal hunting practices. Despite international bans, Japanese and Norwegian entities still use scientific research permits to take hundreds of minke whales every year.
And that meat ends up in markets.
It does. And what's really insidious is the deception involved. DNA tests by environmental groups have repeatedly proven that endangered species, including meat from blue whales, is being illegally passed off as minke whale meat.
On top of that, the Japanese government actually subsidizes this industry. They actively introduce whale meat into school lunch programs just to try and bolster declining consumer demand.
It's a deliberate, subsidized effort to keep the meme of whaling alive, even as the global meme shifts toward conservation.
And then you have the equally tragic decline of the North Atlantic right whale. This has nothing to do with hunting.
Nothing. It's all about human infrastructure and, frankly, stupidity. Their population is critically low. Fewer than 300 of them are left.
They're filter feeders, they travel close to the surface, and they just don't have the behavioral capacity to avoid massive commercial shipping lanes. They're frequently killed by ship strikes.
The phrase used in the sources is blunt. It says they are stupid as shit and won't get out of the way when they hear a ship coming. Their decline is a direct casualty of human speed and commerce, an unintentional massacre caused by noise and infrastructure.
And finally, we have to talk about pollution and habitat loss. Our oceans, though they're vast, are effectively shrinking the habitable zones for many top predators.
High-level feeders like dolphins and killer whales accumulate our man-made toxins through the food chain PCBs, flame retardants, pesticides. They build up to such high concentrations that when their bodies wash ashore, their blubber actually qualifies as hazardous toxic waste.
That's a staggering implication. If the blubber of high-level marine feeders is toxic waste, and we are also at the top of that seafood chain, the message for human health and ocean stewardship is inescapable.
Right. Nate's research gave him this profound understanding of life's replicative conflict, genes versus memes. The humpbacks found a constructive cultural output, their song, which translated into prayer, and it was rewarded by the goo. The goo tolerates the humpback's cultural artifact.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought. If the goo, an organism older than bone, is judging the humpbacks by their successful meme, their prayer, what is it thinking of our culture? What does the goo think of the memes carried by our own communication systems, our social media, our endless commercial noise, our political shouting?
If the song of the whale is rewarded prayer, what is the sound of humanity? And if the goo decides our meme is fundamentally hostile to the propagation of life on Earth, how long until it stops being just an observer and becomes an active participant in our evolutionary process?